Welcome back, everyone, to session number 3. It's entitled Inspirations, Our Stories. Why do we tell our stories? We all have our stories, our lives, our loves, our disappointments, our joys, our traumas, our wounds, and so on. I have mine, and I'm sure you all have yours. But why do we tell our stories? And why do we want to listen to others' stories? It's because when we tell our story, we connect with others. We form relationships. We invite others to enter our lives, and we enter their lives. And when we do this, we grow. We expand. We see ourselves in others. We reflect back ourselves in the other person. In short, we only exist through others. But doesn't it feel good when someone is interested in our stories? And isn't it good that others' stories inspire us? And the opposite. And how isolated and empty does it feel when no one wants to listen to us? Or to when we are silenced? And silenced is a word we have heard from today, from a few people who have been silenced, but not here. Here everyone has their voice. And who has the right to silence anyone? So now we're going to hear from 6 people who have kindly come here today to share their stories with us. These are people who have listened to that voice inside them that has inspired them to walk their own road, and who have refused to be confined by stifling, controlling, and sometimes shaming doctrines or restrictions. In short, these 6 people are 6 free spirits who are quite simply just real. I use the word real because God is real. They have listened and acted to what is inside them. And for a few of them, there's been a price to pay for that authenticity, personal authenticity. It can come at a cost. But they've been rewarded by walking that road of personal authenticity. And we are rewarded today by having them with us. So today I welcome Tony Cassidy, Lisa Loveridge, Morag Liebert. Morag will join us online, as she can't be here in person. Angela Hanley, Penelope Middelboe, and Vic Camp. Let's start with Lisa.
Thank you.
Lisa is an interfaith minister, a role which has allowed her to see the church in a wider perspective, to look for God in everyone and everywhere. Initially, Lisa joined COE, Catholic Women's Ordination, but for Lisa, COE was more about justice for women rather than about being ordained to the priesthood. To realise her calling to ministry, Lisa realised she would have to find another way of expressing it. So being influenced by Benedictine Bede Griffiths and Jesuit William Johnson, who you may have heard of, Lisa has found her interfaith ministry as the way to follow God. Lisa works in the pastoral care of residents in a retirement village and care home. She has also links with our local RC parish, Roman Catholic parish, but has not always been made welcome there. I think that's a story many of us could resonate with. So Lisa's going to share with us her very inspiring way to move forward in ministry. So over to you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm the child of 2 very orthodox converts to Catholicism. My father's family was Baptist, his father a Baptist missionary, and my other granny on the other side was Anglican, and her family were all Anglican. I always felt close to God when I was a child. And at my 6th form, I studied Hinduism, and it was a Catholic sixth form, and discovered there that there was a trinity at the heart of Hinduism, which made me very curious. I also learnt about social justice when I was at school, and social justice in the sense of loving my neighbour meant a requirement of justice for my neighbour as well as for me. When I was 18, I left home and I wanted to have sex with my boyfriend. And I had a massive, massive crisis about that, because all my beliefs up to that point was that the church was right and I was wrong. In the end, my conscience had the last say about that. So you might say that was where it all went wrong. And yes, I did learn about Bede Griffiths. I think somebody at sixth form said to me, well, if you're interested in Hinduism, you'd better read Bede. And later I was part of a spiritual book group, which was loosely related to an organisation called Christians Awakening to New Awareness. And I was about 40 or something at the time, sitting with these 70-year-olds, with them bringing these amazing books where we'd read a chapter of the book every month and then talk about it. And one of those books was a book by William Johnson, which I think you reminded me yesterday is Zen Christianity. Yes. William was a Zen Buddhist master and lived in Japan. And both of those people created neither of them had a view that Catholicism was the only way for a start, or even that Christianity was the only way. And they both were able to draw on these other traditions, and those traditions resource them in their faith. I think that would be a fair, or at least in their relationship to God. I was really involved in my parish in many kinds of ministry, and also in the diocese. So I was, for 3 years, chair of the Diocesan Justice and Peace Commission. I did music ministry from when I was a teenager. I used to read at Mass. I was on the pastoral council. And at the time of this particular incident, I was secretary of the parish council. So Pope Francis had written his first letter, which was all about, or partly about, becoming poor parishes for the poor. And my parish at that time sat in a very mixed economic area, and the local drug addicts used to sometimes use the garden for shooting up, and so they'd leave their needles around. And there was another woman who at least once had sex outside the church, and somebody else would get drunk and defecate on church property, but only once every blue moon. And all of this meant that suddenly we were spending £40,000 on iron railings to keep all of these people out. And that conversation about being a poor parish of the poor, although the parish council agreed to have that conversation and discuss what that might mean, that was deleted from the minutes that I'd taken. So, yeah, I know. So therefore, I wasn't happy that the church that I was part of was actually living in a Christian way. And I had to leave and stop going to Mass, which, to be fair, my children, who the youngest of whom was about 7 at that time, had already made that decision that they didn't feel comfortable within this church. So somewhat after that, I met an interfaith minister, and she was sharing her spiritual journey, which was many and varied, and also about her healing journey as a person, so how she'd healed a lot of the traumas that had happened to her in her life. And that made me reflect on B. Griffiths and William Johnson and other people, and made me want to follow that path. But my husband was like, that's a lot of money to spend on a training, Lisa, when you don't know what you're going to do at the end of it. So just have a look and see what jobs are available. So I thought, okay. And I found the job that I have now, working with older people. 2 years later, I eventually started to train to be an interfaith minister, and really a lot of that is about the respect for the individuality of our spiritual paths, respect for our own authority and relationship with God, and as a result, I have a growing openness to God in all traditions and hopefully in all people, but I haven't got there yet. I came back to church at the end of the pandemic because I wanted to be able to give Catholic residents at my work Holy Communion. They were struggling to get Holy Communion. We have 6 nuns at my work, and it was important. So I literally said to the priest, who I saw every month because I organised for him to come and say Mass anyway at work, so what do I need to do to be a Eucharistic minister then? And he said, come to church, Lisa. So there we go, that was all right. Except I felt that over that time we'd got a really good relationship with one another. And I noticed that he was making some decisions that had massive pastoral implications, but there was no consultation about that whatsoever. And one day I said to him, what would it take for you to sit down, or do you ever envisage it being possible, is what I said to him, for you to sit down with the parishioners and talk to them about all these problems that you're facing and come to some solutions together? The response to that was to send the deacon around to interview all the residents at my work, tell me that I shouldn't really be calling myself reverend and I wasn't properly ordained, and who was I anyway, and basically made me quite scared and extremely uncomfortable. So we've got sort of a bit of an uncomfortable thing going on. In terms of what was helpful, I think meeting friends in Quo and Root and Branch, being part of a meditation group, which I set up a long time ago, not as a meditation group, but it's become that, of women who are on the edge of the church, the National Justice and Peace Network and Diocesan Justice and Peace Friends, the Spiritual Book Group, supportive priests and nuns who I do know, and being able to reach out to people for support. That's been extremely helpful. Also, this thing about putting Catholicism in a wider context. So the mystical paths of all the religions are really quite similar in terms of the unity with God. So that just helps me to tread more lightly with what I experienced, really. Ken Wilber, I don't know if any of you know him, he's developed integral theory, and he talks a lot about transcending and including other levels of spiritual development. And the exclusionary idea of religion, in the way he conceptualizes things, it's a very low level of spiritual development, and it's worth remembering that when we're on the end of it. I'm very conscious about my baptism as priest, prophet and king. You'll have to excuse the king, I can't think of a better word for it, but that's the one that we use, isn't it? And so all of us remembering our authority, my authority, and knowing that we are the church and it's not the 3%. And finally, prioritising my relationship with God and just making time to spend with God, and always progressing in my spiritual journey and my spiritual growth. Those would be the main things that have helped me.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I'm sure later on there may be some questions coming up, but let's move on to our second speaker who joins us online. Morag, are you there? Morag Liebert. Morag? I'll introduce Morag.
Yeah, so she's around.
Okay. Morag Liebert joins us here today from Edinburgh. Morag is a woman Catholic priest. Have you heard of a woman Catholic priest? Yes, we have. Morag was originally planning to be here with us in person, but she wasn't able to come. But she is here online. Oh, good. In the 1960s, Morag was delighted that the Church of Scotland began to ordain women, as I'm sure we all were. The idea was unthinkable then to the Episcopalian, Anglican, or Catholic churches. But after a career in nursing and teaching, Morag obtained a degree in divinity. She was accepted for training by Roman Catholic women priests and ordained in 2009, incurring automatic excommunication by Rome. Well done, Morag. I hope you have the T-shirt. She was accepted for training by, she runs a small house church and says, this is the best that I can do to further the campaign for equality for women and the ordination of women to the priesthood in the Roman Catholic Church. So, Morag from Edinburgh, the floor is now yours.
Gertrude May, a member of Kirche von Unten, held a meeting in Munich to which she invited women who were very interested in campaigning for the ordination of women to the priesthood in the Catholic Church. One of them, Christina Meyer-Lumitzberger, then wrote a program of training for ordination to the priesthood for women who had a degree in theology, and the group polished it up and advertised it. We Are Church in Germany and Austria supported the course. About 15 women did the course part-time over 3 years. All of these women had done a lot of work for the church over many years: pastoral work, counselling, or teaching religious education. And they were certain that the church would ordain women to the priesthood quite soon. They realised at the end of their course that this was not going to happen in the foreseeable future. So 7 of them decided to find a bishop in the church who would ordain them, and they did find one. Bishop Romulo Braschi of Argentina ordained the 7 women to priesthood on the 29th of June 2002 on a boat on the River Danube, in the presence of families, friends, journalists, and press photographers. The bishop's credentials had been carefully checked so that the women were indeed ordained in apostolic succession to Peter. The ordinations of the Danube 7 received worldwide news coverage, and the women received worldwide support. After being given an official warning, the women were excommunicated on the 5th of August 2002 by the CDF. Again, the women received worldwide support. On the 26th of June 2003, Gisela Förster and Christina Meyer-Lumitzberger were consecrated as bishops, secretly by 2 bishops in post in the Catholic Church. The movement has ordained its own priests and consecrated its own bishops since then. After the 7 women's ordination to priesthood, they started to receive requests from other women who wanted to do their training course and be ordained as priests like them. So the training course continued, and so have the ordinations. On the 29th of May 2008, the CDF decreed that any woman who attempts ordination and any bishops who attempt to ordain women are automatically excommunicated from the church by their actions. Today, we have about 300 priests on 5 continents. Our priests are single, married, and married in same-sex relationships, and we have some nuns. And we also have among us some male priests as well. We don't exclude men. We do not use religious titles or wear clerical dress. We have inclusive churches and open communion. When I was a teenager in the 1960s, I suddenly discovered that the minister of the local congregational church was a woman. I thought this was wonderful and felt strongly that women ought to be ordained to Christian ministry. Soon after this, the Church of Scotland started to ordain women to ministry. I was delighted. When I left school, I went to Edinburgh University and did an MA with nursing studies. I was one of the early students in the nursing studies department. And my MA, it turned out, in the end of the day, was in biblical studies and moral philosophy. And I decided that if I could ever go back to university one day, I would do a BD. When I retired, I did return to the university and I did a BD honours in divinity. Meantime, in 1994, I received through the post a leaflet anonymously about Catholic women's ordination, and I joined by return post. I thought, this is what I've always been waiting for. Through Co, I heard about the Danube 7, and I also met a couple of them at conferences. While doing my BD, a couple of fellow students and also a lecturer told me about the Catholic women who'd been ordained as priests on the Danube. And I had to tell them I already knew about them. On graduation day, the principal of the School of Divinity at that time, and I need to mention he is long retired. In fact, I don't know if he's still alive. He asked me what I was going to do with my degree. And I told him that I was part of the campaign for women priests in the Catholic Church. And he said to me that he thought the Vatican was a hard nut to crack. So he thought I should hit it harder. So I took his advice. I applied to train as a priest with the Roman Catholic Women Priests movement and was accepted for training. I did have an inner conviction that I should do this. I was ordained as a priest on the 24th of October 2009 in Edinburgh by Dr. Bridget Mary Meehan. Since then, I have run a small house church and I've occasionally given talks about the RCWP. I don't mind being excommunicated. It's quite all right, actually. And I'm still a member of a parish where I receive a lot of support. And this is the very best that I can do to further the cause of equality for women and women's ordination in the Roman Catholic Church.
Thank you, Morag. Thank you. We'll now move on to Tony Cassidy. Another well-known Redemptorist priest. Tony studied theology at the University of Kent at Canterbury in a non-denominational course. After ordination, he studied scripture at the Pontifical Biblical Institute in Rome, and later taught for 14 years at the Franciscan Study Centre in Canterbury. Recently in charge of a parish in South London, where his focus was on parochial self-empowerment, the theme of this event, empowerment. He was suddenly removed following false and anonymous accusations about his theology and liturgical practices. Now living in Liverpool, his teachings are being well received by all. So, Tony, over to you. Yeah.
It's just an accident there are so many Scottish voices. I'd just like to start off by following up what Mary Ring was saying at the beginning about the Holy Spirit, because my Pentecost Sunday sermon was about the Spirit as the feminine principle in the divinity, in the Godhead. So if you want any more information, you can ask later on. So as Kevin was saying, I was actually 4 years in this parish in South London, and basically what I wanted to do was to form a community where, if there was no priest, the parish could continue. And it was very much based on, the theology of the church as the people of God, the people of God in the world today. So the focus really of the ministry was to, empower the members of the parish to take their rightful place and responsibility in the life of the church. For that reason, well, when I went, there was no parish council and there was no financial secretariat either. So those were the two first things that I set about. The setting up of the parish council actually was a bit rocky, because we had an election, and basically there were, I think it was 8 members elected, and then there was a similar number from the various parish bodies, representative. But it was only when I actually saw them in person that I realised that this was not going to work. Mainly because there was a very powerful UCM body in the parish, and they had voted for each other. So, and the representatives of the various groups were, it was more or less a mirror image. So basically, the problem I found was that we had a basically older parish council, and they were all basically white. Now this was South London, and the parish was made up of a very good and interesting ethnic mix, but there were whole groups of people were not represented. There were no young families represented, and the younger people on the council were actually members of families who were already represented. So after a couple of years of this, I spoke to the chair of the parish council, who was, he was a deputy head of a girls' school, and he was as frustrated as I was. So we decided that I would dissolve the parish council and we would appoint representatives from these other groups. Unfortunately, of course, then COVID struck, so we never really got it properly established. The main mass on the Sunday then, it was basically a family mass, because, you know, young families did start to come, and the liturgy was based around the children. And then at the Eucharistic prayer, I used to bring the children up round the altar, because we'd fixed it so it was much more accessible. So I used to ask the children, who celebrate the Eucharist? Is it just the priest? No. Or is it the priest? Yes. I said, is it just the priest? Or is it us here? And they all would agree with that. And then I would say, and what about the people in the cheap seats? So basically that went on every week. So in other words, it was reinforcing through the children. You know, in other words, I was speaking to the adults rather than the children. The idea that we're all offering the Eucharist, that, you know, you have the idea of the priesthood of the faithful, the priesthood of all believers, that we're all involved in the priesthood and in the offering of the Eucharist, that there's no, when we're celebrating any of the sacraments, there are no spectators, that we're all involved. So what happened was, when I had to be away during the week, the ministers, the readers and the ministers of the Eucharist took a communion service, and there was never any complaint. I was a bit concerned, because I thought, well, if people don't, if people realise that there's no mass, strictly speaking, they're not going to come. But it didn't make any difference. The people were quite happy. And there was one vigil mass when I couldn't get back in time because of the trains, that they had to have a Eucharistic service for the Sunday mass. And once one or two of the more scrupulous people were assured that this was meeting their obligation, it went off without any problem. And the fond memory I have of the liturgy there is that one Good Friday, I said the opening prayer and the concluding prayer, but I did nothing for the rest of the service. It was the people who did it all. And again, they were all perfectly happy. But what I always did was I always had one or two people, and I said to them, if you feel there's something I should know, then tell me. So that, if they felt that there was some unhappiness, then I should know about it. I wanted to know about it. And that they were, empowered and, authorised to tell me. So that's the kind of the positive side of things. The difficulty I had was, again, with people not telling me things. And the one example I'll give you about this is on Thursday morning, they used to have exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, and then there was the chance for confessions. And the confessional had these glass panels. And eventually, a couple of, it was more than a couple of weeks after this had started, this practice, one of the ladies came to me very nervously and said, do you realise you can be heard at the other side of the church? And I said, well, why didn't somebody tell me? And she was all kind of embarrassed, but I was really annoyed. And I let them know, that this was not on, that this was just irresponsible. But again, well, maybe you can tell me why people wouldn't tell me. But never mind. But the real problem I had was that, to cut a long story short, it had nothing to do with the parish. I used to go into the secondary school, and I had helped out with a study day run by the woman, the lay chaplain, and one of the teachers put in a complaint that I was not upholding Catholic doctrine. The head teacher was perfectly happy with what I had done, and the chair of governors was perfectly happy. But this woman, she then went to the area bishop and complained. He said it was a matter for the school. Not satisfied with that, she then went to the diocese, who then contacted my Redemptorist superior. And a list of 10 complaints had gone in, as Kevin mentioned, and none of them were to do with anything moral or, safeguarding or anything like that. It was all liturgical practice or not upholding the official line, as it were. As I say, none of this came from the parish. It just came from this one. I'm pretty sure it was the one person reading through the complaints. But she also had obviously enlisted a cleric, because you could tell by the language that there was a clerical hand, behind it. Anyhow, I had a bit of a breakdown, basically. As I've said to somebody, I can live, and if you're in religious life, this is important, that I could live with situations which seemed to come out of P.G. Wodehouse. But I couldn't live with something that came out of Kafka. And that was what it felt like, that you didn't know what was going on, you didn't know who was accused, because these complaints were anonymous. And although the Vicar General came and said I had no case to answer, he then gave me a list of conditions or recommendations which basically upheld the complaints. One of them was, during Advent, every year I got a woman vicar to come and talk about Mary. And she would come and put on her, there were 3 different ones, but she would put on her alb and stole and sit on the sanctuary, read the gospel, preach, and so on. But none of the parishioners objected. And, when I was told off by my superior, he said that, you've got to be careful not to upset the simple faithful. The simple faithful never complained, and the simple faithful were basically saying, we want more of this. But anyhow, I sent I thought, well, I can't, and I didn't cope with it very well. And I thought, I'll have to go and sort myself out. So I put a notice in for the parish newsletter and said I was going away for a month for a holiday. Then I'll go away and do a guided retreat, and then hopefully I'll be all right. And I sent my superior a copy of this, just to let him know what I was doing. When I came back from the holiday, I discovered he had got in touch with the secretary of the parish, told her not to publish this, but to say that I was being moved. And when I came back, there was another priest in the presbytery, and my stuff was being packed up.
Wow.
I'm not sure I've actually realised the full shock of that yet, but that was what happened. So that's why I'm now in Liverpool.
Liverpool's game.
Yes.
So, but as I say, nobody spoke to me, from the church authorities or my own superiors. And it's just the injustice of it. Because the thing is that the person who made these complaints was never called to account or to justify what she had said. So I think that's probably enough.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Tony. It sounds like what was London's loss has been Liverpool's gain. We'll now move on to running a bit behind schedule. It's been good. So we'll now move on to Angela Hanley. Angela is an Irish theologian, a communicator, and an author of quite a few books. And she's flown in, especially from Ireland, to be with us. To be with us this weekend. Angela has a particular interest in the ways exclusion is implemented within the Roman Catholic Church. And we have heard many stories of exclusion yesterday and today. Her most recent book, and I think the most important from what you were saying yesterday, is What Happened to Mary's Priest, Father Sean Fagan. This is the story of an Irish moral theologian's brutal treatment, and that word brutal, yes, I think you will say is accurate. Brutal treatment by the Vatican. Similar to Tony Flannery, this courageous and compassionate priest was also silenced. Another word we have brought up quite a few times in this weekend. Before Sean Fagan died, he asked Angela to tell the story of how he was censured and silenced by the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith in Rome. Angela's present research, I think, is on same-sex unions for Catholic, gay, lesbian couples.
Yeah, well, that was for a master, so I'm just beyond that now.
Okay. Well, anyway, you can share with it.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Kevin. How wonderful it is to be here. I suppose I was never, even as a child, a conformer. I was always a person of faith from the earliest days. And as I grew into maturity in the Catholic Church, the more I opened my mind, the more questions I asked, the more I read, the more disenchanted I became. And in approximately 2011, 2012, I essentially became what I call a semi-detached Catholic. My faith was there, but I had given up going to Mass. So I had faith in search of a home. I suppose I was fortunate in that I'm an introvert, so I didn't quite feel the loss that people can feel sometimes if they don't have communication with others. But having said that, it was still a lonely place. But COVID, which wrought so much havoc and brought so much misery to so many lives, actually brought something very positive for me. I was part of a loosely connected book club group that formed between students that I'd studied with when I did my theology degree, and we were from different parts of the country and didn't want to lose all connection. So it wasn't a highly active book group, but it worked, and we would meet maybe 3 times a year in a hotel in Dublin for a Sunday lunch, and it was just a way of sort of keeping together, and I found that very, very important to me. But when lockdown happened, I suppose we were fortunate in that there was already a little means of communication there. One of the members, and I will mention her by name because she's looking in, her name is Jackie, and she was pivotal to the setting up of our group. And she decided to ask people to post one positive thought per day in the email thread we had for the book group. It could be anything, but so long as it was positive in whatever way. So people started doing that and found it really, really good, and we called it the positive thread. Every positive thread has 50 emails, and we're in our 151st iteration of the positive thread. So it maintains. That was when lockdown started. Now, towards the end of April, another member who was very involved in her parish and was really feeling the loss of the community asked, could we pray together on Zoom? Maybe just once, that was it. She just needed this. We all thought it was a good idea. Very few of us knew really what Zoom was, but became acquainted very, very quickly. And it was such a positive experience that when the various lockdowns were over, we decided to keep going. And we were praying weekly 4 years later, continuous. We didn't start with a plan. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am among them, was our guiding light. There was an organic development whereby we found a day and a time that suited most people most of the time. Members of the group, without particular direction, as I said, it truly was organic. Members of the group took responsibility for preparing a liturgy in any given week, and then this was circulated among the group in advance. Other people hosted, who were a little bit more techie, hosted the event. There was no formula. People developed a liturgy according to their inspiration. And I mean, we're very conscious of the presence of the Spirit. There was no strict rota. People volunteered as they were able, whether that meant preparing something twice a month or once in 2 months. Jackie organised and kept the calendar for us and continues to do so. She would put out a call towards the end of 1 month for volunteers for the 4 weeks of the next month. There was and is no judgment about who prepares what and how often. And this worked really well during lockdown. But as life returned to its usual patterns, that affected our praying community. There were many reasons why some people could not attend as regularly as they had before. However, in the spirit of the non-judgmental community we had become, that wasn't a problem. Those who had developed a gift for preparing good liturgies just volunteered more often. When over time that became more difficult to do, Jackie suggested that we do what's called a free-form liturgy. Anyone in the group can suggest a theme, and others share something from scripture or spiritual writings or poetry or all three on that theme. We even occasionally have a come as you are liturgy, where people present pray on whatever moves them on that particular day. Now they're rare, but they're useful in their way too. And we also then decided to revisit previous liturgies, and this has proved to be very enlightening because you hear things differently at different times. The watchword for our praying community is flexibility and common purpose. How can we make it as easy as possible for as many as possible to attend? And because the daytime became difficult for some people because either they were involved in their parish, choir practice, we've, various members volunteering in various ways. So we have one evening prayer a month. And even with all that, sometimes just the particular week that's in it, attendance can be small. It has happened. But again, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name guides us and inspires us. And it is always life-giving. We have never broken bread at our gatherings simply because the question never arose. I think we all had a profound sense of community and the presence of the Holy Spirit among us, so that our whole prayer is Eucharistic in the sense of belonging and thanksgiving. And I was very conscious of that when Tony mentioned this morning about the focus on what happens on the altar. that it is so much more than that. And we have found that in our group. I mean, thanksgiving is even uttered when people feel deeply challenged by their life circumstances at a particular time. The thanksgiving is offered for what we learn by coping with our challenges. We do not have a separate penitential space in our liturgy, but honesty in our failures is an integral part of the prayer. There is a space for reflection on the liturgy where people can speak and reflect if they wish, but again, there's no obligation. This openness to one's own failings, and I must say it's in a healthy way, is a gift to the group. It allows for healthy admission of falling short, missing the mark, but with the hope and faith that we can start again, confident in the immeasurable love and mercy of God, our Creator, and the support of our community. And it's in this space we also pray for others. People in the community bring the prayers of their other community to it, and we pray for others. I mean, we use first names only, and there's something very beautiful in that. It really enhances the whole communitarian spirit of it. Time and again, different members of our community speak of how important it is to them. And our positive thread that was meant for keeping our hearts up during lockdown has also continued. This remains a constant source of support and care during the week. Now, there mightn't be much activity on it, but it's there. And even people, if they don't respond, it is read, because when something needs responding to, for whatever reason, it comes in like that. So people are looking, people are reading. And there's something deeply consoling. I have found this myself, knowing that you're held in the prayer of others. Apart from myself, the other members of the group also attend Mass, many daily. And it's not a question of either or, but both and. Presence at one liturgy does not preclude presence at another. In a way, we had self-empowerment forced upon us by circumstances of COVID lockdown, but we have continued to choose empowerment, and I heartily recommend it. It is a gift that keeps on giving: consolation, support, care, and a beautiful environment in which to praise and thank and give thanks to our gracious God. All the things that we need to help us flourish and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Just coming together again. Bringing people together, community. I'm sure there will be some questions later. Our last two speakers, we'll introduce them together. Penelope Middelboe.
Hi.
Penelope was the driving force behind Spirit Unbounded in 2023 that most of you will know about. And she's here to tell us about how it all came together as a worldwide platform for church reform organisations. With her husband, John Rosebank, she led the creation of an incredible 115 plus small videos, from all parts of the world. You may have seen some of them. If you haven't, you must. And it's all set in the context of human rights within the emerging Catholic Church. Incredible, 115 short videos. These astonishingly beautiful stories may be seen on the Spirit Unbounded website, free for all to view, and form a rich tapestry of thought and for discussion. Penelope also enjoys writing a regular column for the Synodal Times and being a grandmother. Yeah. But along with Penelope, we also welcome Vic Camp, who I think is busy with her two children.
Yes,
who may or may not be able to join us. Vic will actually launch the Root and Branch's Spirit Unbounded treasury of videos. It's an which can form an easy access course using those 115 videos for parishes across the world. It's an amazing and rich resource, and it allows individuals, small groups or parishes to understand the real crucial questions facing Catholics globally, but especially with regards to human rights in the Catholic institution. Oh, welcome, Vic.
Hi.
Vic just says that she feels blessed to be on this journey. So, Penelope and Vic, together, the floor is yours.
Hello. I am a co-founder of Spirit Unbounded. It's an unusual name, but I don't think anyone here doesn't understand it. We cannot decide who the Spirit speaks to, what she says, when she says it. We did, however, have to explain it to the Vatican. It's spiritunbounded.org, and it's simply a website. We decided we were stronger together, and there are many, many reform groups across the world that have been going, some of them for 50 years, but there has traditionally been quite a bit of, well, we're in this group and we don't work with you. That's all changed. But I think instrumental was Spirit Unbounded providing just a neutral platform, and 3 reform groups, Root and Branch, We Are Church, and Wine Guards, got together, and we spent a whole year from October 2022 convincing the other reform groups not to be sceptical of us, and that we weren't there to control them. We were literally there to provide this neutral platform. And I can say it's still going strong, and that we now have 48 umbrella companion groups. So within one umbrella, there are many, many groups across the world. And our first large event, which many of you might have been part of last year, was in October 2023 for the first synod in Rome. We remembered that the Pope Francis, when asked about human rights, had said, I think he was thinking of the communist countries and dictatorships, not of the Catholic Church. He said, let us preserve freedom of conscience. So we thought, there we are. We will have a large event, and we will call it Human Rights in the Emerging Catholic Church. And we asked all the companions to contact people who they thought might be interested in telling their personal story. So it was very interesting to hear the power of story from Penny Brown earlier, and Kevin has reinforced it. We didn't say you've got to be critical of the Catholic Church, but I'm afraid of all the videos that we received, they were all pointing out where the Catholic Church was not protecting human rights. We put the programs, my husband John Rosebank and I, into themes, and I really do encourage you to go and listen to some of them, because they bring healing, they give you solidarity, but they give you education, because they're from across the world, some theologians, priests, nuns, many, many ordinary Catholics. And Mary V and her Stolen Lives team put together some really powerful programs within it called Shaking the Tree, about clerical, spiritual and sexual abuse. Vix is going to talk about a bit more how she's come up with this plan to work with these videos. But all I can say is that a year on, nothing really has changed, and they will all remain, all of them, evergreen, powerful witness, sadly, to the state of the church. But they are all from people who care. So they are, all of them give you some sense of hope, but it's their personal sense of hope. And practically, the companions can now share a blog, a calendar, a newsletter to just let people know about events. They're all getting together about what they're going to be doing in Rome this time. We advertised empowering ourselves, etc. And they can use the website to find research partners. So Kevin Liston, who you listened to last night from Australia, he has, with other companions, authored a report on authority and the abuse of power in the church. And we've had that translated into several languages, and many companions are having discussions with the synod delegates, who are not, well, some of them are priests too, but you know, the synod delegates who might listen to us are discussing that paper, and another companion is having scheduled discussions with synod delegates about many other things. And you are right to, I think somebody said yesterday, many of them are really quite disappointed in what's happening. And some of them are really holding on to the hope, and I have no idea what's really going to happen in the middle. But all we can say is that the Vatican has at least taken notice of strength in numbers. So it was worth it. But we also all know that there is no solidarity until they stop believing that they have the monopoly on discerning what is best. And really, we shouldn't be disappointed. We do hope those synod delegates will raise Cain, as Mary McAleese said, but they've always been 100 years or more behind. They didn't understand the Renaissance, and they got the Reformation, and they've never really recovered from that. They were the last to end enslavement, and they treated indigenous peoples terribly, much more recently. They only caught up with modernism at Vatican II, but they were already behind the times. We were in a postmodern period then. So today, they ignore our demand for justice and healing for victims of clerical and sexual and spiritual abuse at their peril. And many people have been saying to me here that they would rather die out than share their power with lay people and give women equality. So, as everybody's been saying, it's up to us to embrace that equality. Nothing less will do. We need to get on the back of the Me Too, the Black Lives Matter, and now the Not in My Name campaigns. They're all about Jesus' power. I mean, not power, message. Jesus' justice. They are all about Jesus' justice. So, no place for lethargy. And with our friends and all the other denominations and other faiths, we have the power. Over to you, Vic.
Oh, thanks, Penelope. Thank you. I don't think I'll be quite as eloquent as that. And sorry if I am distracted. Most of you will have seen we've got our children here with us, so they're running around in the corridor at the moment. I wanted to talk to you about a course that we're launching today, which I'm very excited to, and with thanks to Root and Branch and Spirit Unbounded. Like many of you, I'm sure, I was at the lay-led synod in Bristol, and I came away from it feeling incredibly fired up, but also quite overwhelmed and not quite sure what to do next when I got back to my home in Abergavenny, and how to kind of take that message forward and you know, start being the change that I wanted to see in the world. So I approached Mary and the Root and Branch team and Penelope and said, what about if I wrote a course for you, which is not something I've done before, but what if we wrote a course and took some of the materials, I think there's 115 videos, and we put them together in a short course for people to do in their parishes, in their groups at home, to help walk them through some of the big reform issues, and to give them confidence to be able to tackle those conversations in their daily lives. With thanks to Mary, Angela, Carol, Gaynor and Margaret for being our testers on the course, and for being very patient with us on time. We ran the course over the last couple of weeks over the summer, and hopefully you can speak to Gaynor and Angela, but the feedback was very positive. People liked the course. We did it as a 1-hour online Zoom session. We've now got a website available that you can go to that's got the course. It's an 8-week course. There's a little booklet that you can run through with a small group of friends. You can do it in person or you can do it online, whatever suits you. And the idea is you just work through it in a safe space with each other, and it helps give you a bit of confidence and empowerment, and helps kind of filter down some of the huge wealth of information and videos that there are available into sort of slightly more manageable pieces. So feel free to take this away. If you want to contact me through either Spirit Unbounded or Root and Branch, I'm happy to help start you up with running a course or facilitate a few sessions, because I know that can be a bit daunting. But we've got the website, we've got a booklet, and there's some facilitator notes as well if you feel brave enough to do that with a group of your friends. And I will be around, children willing, if anyone wants to ask me any questions at all. Thank you.
It's a blessing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Penelope and Vic. Incredible resource. So please take a look. We are way over time. We were supposed to end the sharing at 20 to 3, but it's been so rich, it wouldn't have been right to cut people short. So we have a very limited time for questions. We want to stop at 3 because we've got to get up to the All Hallows Church. So let's see. keep questions short. There's the microphone. We have a roving mic.
This is a question for Morag, basically. There are fears that ordaining women deacons, they will be clericalized. So why couldn't the same be said for women priests? How can women change the priesthood so that priests will accept them without them becoming like them?
Right, yes. This is a problem that we recognize. Now, that's why I did explain to you how the Roman Catholic women priests operate, that we are totally different from the way priests in parishes in the official church function. Now, I will say this, is that any of the priests that have talked to me about my situation have always been very supportive. In fact, when I was excommunicated, Cardinal Keith O'Brien and my parish priest were extremely nice about it. And in fact, I am still a member of a parish, and excommunication means you simply can't receive any sacraments, but they give me a blessing instead, and I return the blessing. I do. I've never had any trouble with that. Now, but the thing about women becoming priests in the church is that they need to be very single-minded. And I think by the time it does happen, I think most of the clericalism and the authoritarianism will have gone. What still remains, we're going to have to deal with. And I think the thing is, the way I describe myself is I'm a middle-aged rebel. I think when the things that are wrong in the church, once we are priests and once women have voting power and some equal authority with men in the church, we're going to have to put our feet down very hard and be very bloody-minded about the problems that we know have got to be corrected. We've got to stick it out and be very definite about what's got to change. All right? And you know, I think that's the bottom line. And as I think Mary McAleese said, you know, there's I think something like 54 lay people going to have voting power at the synod. And I think she said she hoped if there was nothing much happening in the synod that these people would rebel. Well, you know, in the end of the day, this is maybe what we're going to have to do. And it can be done if it's got to be done. And I know because I've done it. All right. I mean, that's the best I can say to you. You've got to stand up for what you know is right. And you've got to stand up for proper Christian ethics. Okay. You know, put it this way. The church has never got over the fact that a Roman Catholic priest in Germany called Martin Luther put up a list of complaints about what he knew was wrong. And he suffered the consequences, but he became the leader of the Reformation. He reformed the church, but unfortunately the church excommunicated him and all his followers, and it took the church, I don't know what, ages, years and years before they actually did anything about putting the problems right. The church is too slow to move. You know, this synod should have happened 50 years ago, and they should have brought in all the reforms that everybody around the world is demanding. They should have been brought in with Vatican II 50 years ago. What they're doing now is too little, too late. And if they're not really drastic about the changes that are needed and bringing them in, basically they're signing their own death warrant.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Morag. Thank you, Morag. We're going to see, is there any other... I don't see anything online, so we'll come back to Claire.
Thank you. This is difficult for me. In the church, Hello?
Yes.
In the church this year, it's got hell for people like me. And what I mean is, the Vatican, I don't think entirely out of the blue, but to all intents and purposes, it emerged without consultation, produced a document called Dignitas Infinita, Human Dignity. And if you read that, at the beginning it's very positive and encouraging for human rights across a huge range of issues, and mirrors to some extent the United Nations Declaration for Human Rights. However, towards the end of the document, the Catholic Church is the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith jumps in both feet with hobnail boots on and hammers a lot of sexual rights, things like surrogacy, abortion, and in particular it mentions sex change operations. And without any evidence, without any consultation whatsoever. And then, to top it all up, the Catholic Bishops of England and Wales produces their own version of it, which reflects it, which is now Catholic teaching in England and Wales. And what's been most hurtful for me in particular, because I worked with my diocesan bishops and about half a dozen priests on LGBT Catholic pastoral care in the diocese, stopped completely, and my own diocese has produced its own version of Dignitas Infinita, effectively. I think it says, "All God's loving children," or something. And what that means is that all Catholic schools in our diocese are not allowed to be involved in pride, not to teach anything about what the Catholic Church concerned means by gender ideology, which is it's a useless, well, it's not a useless term. It covers everything the Catholic Church doesn't like, from abortion, surrogacy, contraception, trans issues, and everything else. So, what did that do to me? I was going to go to Mass one Sunday, and I thought, there's no way can I go to church this Sunday when all that had happened. And so I went to the local Anglican church when I knew I'd be okay. And the reason I couldn't go to church is because I thought if I present myself for communion, the priest is going to refuse me. And I didn't want to do that. It was a fear. I'd take communion now in the same church, but that particular Sunday was just overwhelming. And what's really painful is all this has come out without any consultation, out of the blue, and you wonder what's driving it. It's not God, and it's not Jesus. Okay. It must be some nasty people around the place.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Does anybody want... I'm not so sure that was a question, but does anybody want to respond from our panel? If not, we'll move on to the next question. Sorry, Penelope. Can we have the roving... Just a quick comment from Penelope, and we'll move on to another question.
If I'd like to add something to the last speaker, I too was trodden with hobnail boots by that letter, because they dealt with surrogacy in the most objectionable way. I had the cause to go to study surrogacy a few years ago on behalf of somebody in the family. And when that came out, I mean, it was horrible language. And bearing in mind the fact that that particular granddaughter has not yet been told, but and ironically she was baptised at Westminster Cathedral, but it was really vile, and I was moved to the point to write the tablet, and they published my letter, and which I was very grateful for, because I did it out of obligation to my daughter and son-in-law and the rest of the family, because according to that, my granddaughter was a freak. And that was the kind of language that was used. And funnily, when I was praying about the surrogacy before, when I first knew that it was going to have to happen, I came out of Mass one day and I thought to myself, good heavens, what are you worried about? Mary was a surrogate mother.
Mary, we have a question from Mary Ring. Has she gone? No,
I wasn't going to say anything.
Thank you so much. Can I just say to everybody watching online, I have to kidnap our techie, Nick, and take him down to All Hallows Church now. If you're online, when this session is finished, would you please go back to where you came into the link? There were 2 buttons. There's a Zoom button on the top, and the next link says All Hallows Church. So at 4 o'clock, please click that to come in and join us at the church. But my real question was simply to Angela, if you're able to take one. I'm dying to know more about your book on Father Sean Fagan. Could you tell us?
Yeah, it's published by Columba Press, and I actually have a few copies with me. I'm not trotting it out there or anything. And Aer Lingus were very, very mean. I was only allowed 7 kg, which was my clothes, and I wanted to have something to wear today. So very few books came in my backpack. So my husband Gareth is holding it up. So if anyone is interested, I'd happily sell you a copy. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, thank you. We're coming up to 20 past there, but maybe one more very short question. I don't see anything online, so one more question from here, and then we'll end there. Anyone?
My question I find rather difficult to put, but it's to Lisa and Morag. I have problems about people claiming to have a vocation to the priesthood. It seems to me a bit like claiming to have a vocation to marriage before you've been invited to marry anybody or you find anyone you want to marry. I think priests should be invited by a community. No, not necessarily by the official church, but they should be invited by a community rather than saying, I have a vocation.
Lisa, you want to?
Thank you, Janet. I think the nearest I've come to feeling a vocation to the priesthood in a traditional sense is the demand by the people that I work with, the Anglicans that I work with, to have Holy Communion on a Sunday. And that really did cause me to question whether I should be ordained in order to help them to have that. But we found another way to resolve it, and it would have taken too long. I can't commit to being in my job another 5 years while that process takes place. But yeah, I agree with you, and I think within an interfaith ministry kind of context, ordination means a different thing, maybe. It's maybe more of a commitment to service and a commitment to a vow that each of us creates our own vow to God. To that, so it's a different thing entirely, really, and the word's slightly misleading, perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lisa. I think due to time, we'll have to call it a day here. I think we'll agree it's been a very rich sharing, telling our stories, relating, community. We've heard about a God trying to see God in all and in everyone. We've heard from married priests, 200 women, sorry, not married priests, women priests. We've heard of the church as a people of God. We've heard of even breakdowns, the damage that this church can cause. Silencing. We've heard the wonderful phrase, semi-detached Catholics. I think of my own phrase, free-range Catholics. Right. And maybe end on what Penelope said, it's up to us.
Yes.
A phrase we used in Root and Branch for a while, DIY. Let's do it ourselves. It could go on for a long time, but we do have to end. Could you please be outside at 3:35? Is that it? You can come and walk if you want to enjoy the sun. It's about 20 minutes, or there's taxis.